everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today here on the channel, we're going to be talking about 1973's Don't Look Now, and its brand new 4K Blu-ray that just came out from the Criterion Collection. So Don't Look Now was directed by Nicolas Roege. It's celebrating 50 years this year, if you can believe that, and is now considered one of the greatest horror films ever made. But I actually don't look back at this film as a horror film. I look back at it more as a tragedy, just a very, very, very sad film. It stars Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie, two parents. At the very beginning of this movie, their daughter dies in a very tragic drowning accident, and now Donald Sutherland's character, he's going off to Venice. He took a job restoring a church there. Him and his wife head there. They leave their son in London, so it's just the two of them floating around in Venice. Beautiful Venice, by the way. This movie, the shining star of this movie, before we go any further, is the cinematography done by Anthony Richmond. This movie is just shot so gorgeously. The camera is never sitting still. It feels like a lot of handhelds. You know, they're moving around, a lot of zooms, a lot of zoom ins, a lot of zoom outs, a lot of beautiful shots, a lot of stuff where you could just pause the movie, screenshot that, take it to a store, and have it put up on your wall. That's how good this movie looks. This movie feels like if A24 was around in the 1970s, this is the kind of movie they would put out, because this is very much more of an art house horror film, something that clearly inspired directors like Robert Eggers and Ari Aster. And the thing that's most famous about this movie is its very, very scary and tragic ending to this movie, but everything in between is also done very well. I wouldn't say this is the most entertaining film I've ever seen. It's very much of the 1970s. It's a very slow burn horror film, and coming out the same year as The Exorcist, which moves along at a very brisk pace, this is definitely taking its time, trying to set in the same feeling that Donald Sutherland's character is feeling in this movie. He's a very confused and disheveled man walking through the streets of Venice, and that's what we see a lot of in this movie. And if you guys have seen Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, that movie takes place in Venice, and seeing that movie 50 years later and seeing this movie 50 years before, 1973, Venice looks pretty much the same, but it looks very different in these two kinds of movies. Venice in this movie looks like a very lived-in, real kind of place. It just looks absolutely gorgeous. It's got that natural look, natural lighting to it, and like I said, the cinematography is just incredible in this movie, along with the amazing editing that was also done by Graham Clifford in this movie. They do so many unique things with the editing, and it's very much ahead of its time. You know, we do a lot of that cross editing where we're in one scene and we're bouncing between another future scene, or even in the past. We'll have things get sliced in there, like an image of their daughter who had drowned, just show you that's always on Donald Sutherland's mind. Also, the use of red in this movie. At the very beginning of this movie, we see that when their daughter Christine died, she was wearing a red coat. So throughout the movie, you're always going to notice red, whether it be a bunch of school kids wearing red hats or having red lunch boxes, red on the side of a building, just to show you that that's always on these two parents' minds. And that's really the driving force. Feeling of grief that you feel, how you just feel like you're lost in the world, and how these parents are just now lost in Venice, trying to overcome this, and they'll do anything for comfort. And that's all told through this movie with a serial killer storyline going on in the background, which really is in the background of this movie. There it is, no way near in the foreground. They bring it up. We see bodies getting dragged out of the water, but that is not the most important part of this movie. This movie moves along very much like a 1970s movie, so it's very, very slow. But from a technical standpoint, it is just absolutely gorgeous. Like I said, there are images in this movie that will stick with you for the rest of your life. It's that beautiful. Just don't go into this movie expecting to be the most entertained. It's not one of those movies. Yes, I'm reviewing this around spooky season. It's definitely a horror film, but it doesn't have the same tones of other horror films, even movies that came out in the 1970s. This very much feels like a leftover film from the 1960s with, you know, bringing stuff to the 1970s after the code gets lifted. Obviously, this movie has one of the most famous sex scenes in film history, done very, very well done, by the way, with a great score underneath. Again, it doesn't feel horrific. It feels just very sad. The score of this movie leaves you feeling sad. By the end of this movie, the very last scene, they kind of go through a montage. Again, I'm not going to spoil it, but the score that's playing over it, you're not supposed to be leaving that movie feeling scared. You're going to leave this movie just feeling like, man, that was tragic, that was sad, and nothing positive came out of that. And that lasting impact of this film, I think, has helped it stand the test of time, and it's one that you definitely should visit. If you're a cinephile, if you're going into this movie, you want to put it on a Saturday night with your significant other, and you think, oh, we're going to have a good time, we're going to have some fun. This is not a fun movie at all. This is a tragedy. You're really probably going to want to watch this movie if you're just a fan of the technicals, because you probably aren't going to be that entertained while watching this movie. You're going to appreciate this movie more than you're going to enjoy it. But I still think it's such a well made movie. One that if you are a fan of how movies are shot and how movies are edited, I think you're definitely going to get more out of this than somebody who's just going into this movie who wants to enjoy a good old-fashioned horror movie, because I don't think that's what this movie is. But I can definitely recommend it from a technical standpoint, and if you are a fan of film in general. But we're also here today to talk about its brand new Criterion 4K Blu-ray that just came out, and that's what we're going to do right now. But before we dive into that, if you are a fan of 4K Blu-ray reviews, movie reviews, lists, podcasts, and shorts, nothing helps this channel out more than by you just simply liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and then after you're done doing all that, just go out in those streets and tell your friends about us. Let's talk about this 4K Blu-ray.
You're sad. You're so sad, and there's no need to be.
Well, here it is, the new 4K Blu-ray for Don't Look Now. Now, Criterion has already released this on regular Blu-ray, I believe back in 2019, and they decided to bring it to 4K Blu-ray, but it's not their own scan. Studio Canal actually did the scan of this. I believe this was about 2019 as well. I'm not too sure when the scan was done. They did the scan of it, so when you put the 4K Blu-ray, you'll get the Studio Canal logo over the top of it before we go into the film, and they did a phenomenal job. The Blu-ray that's packed in here is the previous Criterion Blu-ray, so it's a pretty big and noticeable jump going from that Blu-ray to the 4K. I didn't expect it because the Blu-ray is actually pretty damn solid. It's a really good Blu-ray with very low amount of film grain, and the colors are pretty damn prominent in it, so I was pretty happy with that Blu-ray. But when you go to the 4K, it is night and day. You got HDR10, you got Dolby Vision, it's in the aspect ratio of 1.85, so it's going to fill up your screen, and right away, the daughter's red coat. You know, on the Blu-ray, it doesn't stand out that much, it doesn't pop off your screen, but when you go to the 4K, my God. Every time we see red, and this movie uses a lot of red, your eyes get drawn to it, which was the original design of this film, but the way this film was shot back in the 1970s, with source material being what it was, you know, the red, you noticed it because everything else in this movie is very flat of its time. You know, we get a lot of beiges, browns, you know, olive greens. Everything is just very flat of the late 1960s and early 1970s, that look that people just loved back then. So seeing a very flashy and bright color like red, it still sticks out, but this 4K Blu-ray is going to really draw your eye to that red, which is again what they were going for. But then because we got Dolby Vision and HDR10, now the skin looks a lot more natural. It doesn't look as, you know, in the 1080p Blu-ray, everything kind of just looks a little bit fuzzy, very much of the 1970s, if you know that 1970s look. Now it looks a lot more vivid, a lot more dynamic, a lot sharper. Definitely the 4K resolution, you can notice the increase in that. You know, one thing about the deep blacks, it's hitting those deep blacks. Now it does have its moments. I just want to point that out. If you're watching the 4K, you might notice a little bit of film grain coming in, and your eye might get drawn to it, and you might be like, you know, I noticed the grain here a little bit more than in other scenes. And you just got to remember, 50-year-old film, source material is what it is. It really still does a fantastic job at hitting those deep blacks, because there are a lot of scenes in the dark here, and you have really no issue at all noticing every single bit of detail in here. For a film that's 50 years old, and comparing it to maybe The Exorcist that came out just on 4K as well not too long ago, comparing those two films, you might say, oh, The Exorcist looks a little bit better on 4K, but they also have very different visual styles. A lot of this movie is lit naturally outdoors in Venice. They filmed it in Venice, so the source material is definitely very different. They had a very certain kind of camera that they were using, definitely a lot more handheld, so it's not as much in a controlled environment, even though The Exorcist has some very famous stories about how they shot that. But this, they were going for that more this is more like in line with the French Connection, I would say, which is funny because William Friedkin directed that. But if you watch the French Connection and then you watch this, you could definitely see that they have very similar shooting styles. And I just feel like the French Connection, if that eventually ever does come to 4K, would definitely look more like this movie. So if you were to compare The Exorcist and this, you might be like, oh, The Exorcist definitely looks a little bit better, and they're the same age, but I still think that this movie is a 10 out of 10 visually for what they were going for the look of this movie, and just the incredible upgrade from Blu-ray to 4K. You have to see it with your own eyes. And if you have that original second sight 4K Blu-ray that came out, there is no reason for you to get this, because it has all the same exact stuff visually and audio-wise. Now, audio-wise, there really is only one audio track on here, and that is an LPCM mono track, so it's really nothing special, but everything is crisp and clear. There's a lot of moments in this movie where there is no audio or no score. Actually, I love what they do with the audio in this movie. The way they'll have moments of just complete silence, and then all of a sudden, you'll have the noise just shoot in. There's a scene in this movie where Donald Sutherland, you know, he's at the church, he's working on something, and we see a board falling towards him, and it's completely silent, and the sound doesn't kick in until it hits the glass, and then it all just comes shooting at you. Now, a 5.1 or Dolby Atmos track would have definitely made that feel special now, but I still think that this LCPM track is very good. You could set the remote down, whatever volume you want to watch it out. Everything is mixed very well, no pops, nothing like that. So it's still a very good track, but it's a very basic and bland track. Obviously, we would want a little bit more now, especially since the visuals have been upgraded so much. It would have been cool to get some brand new audio tracks on here, but it is what it is. And as far as the extras go, these are all previously released extras, all from different sources, by the way, including Blue Underground and Synops Films, so that's pretty cool. So they got stuff from like 02, 04. They have a good 20-minute making of documentary. Bunch of good interviews in here, and again, this is a movie that's very influential on certain directors like Steven Spielberg, so you have an interview on here with him talking about how this movie influenced him. So it's really cool. You get a lot of great interviews, not too many, but you still get some interviews. And as far as the packaging goes, this looks identical to their previously released package, which is fine because it's a very solid looking package. Always enjoy red and white. You come inside, it's a 2-disc set now, so you get the 4K Blu-ray, and that's the same previously released Blu-ray. And this paper stock, it's a poster, but on the other side you have some reading material. I'm not a big fan when they do something like that because it ends up looking like a 1950s newspaper and just being gigantic. But I still appreciate that. That's just an added bonus for us. Nothing too special, but I'm still not going to complain about that because they did give it to us. And overall, I have to say, this was a very solid release from the Criterion Collection. Visually, absolutely stunning. Now, Criterion, like I said, didn't do that. Studio Canal did, and they just did a phenomenal job. That is the standout performance of this. If you have the previous Blu-ray, even from the Criterion Collection, I would say probably wait for a sale because all you're going to be getting is that visual upgrade. Everything else is the same. November, there's usually the Barnes & Noble Criterion sale, so probably wait for them. I actually picked this up in their 24-hour flash sale because I wasn't really in too much of a rush to get this, but when it dropped down to $25, I was like, no brainer. It's a great film, and I want to see that cinematography in 4K, and really, that's what you buy the 4K Blu-ray for. So I could definitely recommend it if you don't have it at all. It's definitely worth it at full price for that. But if you have the Studio Canal version, there is no reason to get this. If you have the previous Criterion Blu-ray version, I recommend waiting for a sale. Overall, though, I would give this Criterion 4K Blu-ray release a really solid 8.5 out of 10. The visuals are the standout, but everything else is still firing at all cylinders. It's still really good, just not the best, but still definitely worth it. And I can highly recommend the film, even if you don't want to check it out in this 4K Blu-ray format. It's still one of those films that if you're a cinephile, you got to see at least once in your life. Just don't go into it expecting to be entertained. And it's also Monday, guys. So that means it's time for our digital code giveaway, and that's what Future John is going to talk to you guys about right now. That is correct, Past John. It is time for us to pick our 2 winners of the digital code giveaway. So in Friday's video, which happened to be the top 10 Martin Scorsese films, I asked you guys 2 digital code giveaway questions. And those 2 digital code giveaway questions are, what is your favorite Martin Scorsese movie, and what is your favorite Leonardo DiCaprio film? And answers were all over the place, but most of you guys agreed with me that Goodfellas is the greatest Martin Scorsese film, but we had answers that were all over the place. I was actually surprised at how many people picked Shutter Island, not only for Martin Scorsese, but also for Leonardo DiCaprio, which is speaking right to my heart. That movie goes up and up my list every single time I watch it. Shutter Island is one of those underappreciated Martin Scorsese films because it doesn't feel like a Martin Scorsese film. That's him paying homage to the people that inspired him, like Alfred Hitchcock, and what you end up with is a great mystery thriller film that has some horror aspects in there, and it'll also break your heart at the very end of it. So I agree with a lot of you guys on that one. Also, a lot of people pick Catch Me If You Can, which is actually a very underappreciated Steven Spielberg film, and also features 2 of my favorite actors of all time, and not just Leonardo DiCaprio, but Tom Hanks as well. So I agree with you guys on that one as well. That's a great choice, but all of your choices were all awesome. I really did appreciate that. Everybody who entered into the digital code giveaway, thank you all so much, and let's see who this week's 2 winners are. First wheel spin coming up.
Taking the elevator, going up. Got a lot of ground to cover, and I'm in love with the good life. Can't give it up. Make it to the top, keep climbing. I wanna live it up. The good life. I'm coming up, I'm coming up.
Naomi O. Oh, all right, Naomi, I'm going to remove your name.
Ooh, taking the elevator, going up. Got a lot of ground to cover, and I'm in love with the good life. Can't give it up. Make it to the top, keep climbing. I wanna live it up. The good life. I'm coming up, I'm coming up.
And razzle dazzle. And there you have it, Naomi O and Razzle Dazzle. Congrats, guys. You guys know how this works by now. Reach out to me at my email address, letstalkentmt@gmail.com, and let me know which of the digital codes you want. As long as the other winner didn't take that digital code, that digital code is all yours. And if you entered the digital code giveaway and you didn't see your name on the magic wheel, and that's not your fault, that is mine, let me know, and we will get you a digital code as well, because those are the rules. And if you didn't win this week, don't forget to come back to this Friday's video to do this all over again. This Friday's video will be my review for Priscilla, the newest film coming out from Sofia Coppola. I'll be seeing that on Thursday. I'll have my review out on Friday. And then on Friday, you guys can enter into this week's digital code giveaway and try your luck again. And thank you guys all so much for entering into the digital code giveaway. I really do appreciate it. It means the world to me, and I really do appreciate all of you guys interacting here on the channel, continuing to support Let's Talk. I'm not really the best at expressing my gratitude, but I really do appreciate every single one of you for supporting Let's Talk. It really does mean the world to me. Thank you guys all so much. And if you want to continue to support the channel, nothing supports this channel out more than just by you simply liking this video, subscribing to the channel, getting out in those streets, and telling your friends about us. And then we'll be seeing you around.